Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast. Chad Himes here, flying solo, which you know means there's probably an amazing interview that's about to happen because I ditched Ben, I ditched Bob. It's just me and someone on the other end of this. Now, I say someone, yet you've probably already seen the title of the episode and his name's already in it, so you knew what was coming. Yet it doesn't matter. I want you to be amazed by the conversation that I'm going to have today. And we are bringing on Jerry Fetta, who's the CEO and founder of Wealth DynamX. And I love it. And maybe you say it DynamX. I don't know. Jerry, you'll get into it for us. That's all I'm going to do for introducing you, Jerry, because I want you to introduce yourself to the Win, Make, Give audience so they find out what really matters to you and about you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Chad. It's great to be on. Man, so a little bit about me. So I own Wealth DynamX. My company, we focus on helping, families, individuals, entrepreneurs become financially educated, financially solvent, and then achieve greater levels of financial freedom in their lives. And ultimately, we want them also sharing that with others. Money is something that we should have learned about in school. Most of us didn't. And so that's my passion, is sharing education and making sure people understand how to build wealth, how to achieve financial freedom. So that's a little bit about me. I'm from Alaska. I now live in Florida with my team. And so we run our company from down here. We've got people all over the US and different countries. And I love what I do. I love helping people with finances.
Well, let's do some of that today, because here in this season, we are focused on making a difference, making an impact, and making more money. And Jerry's definitely a guy that we want to have on this conversation. Now, Jerry, before we get into anything, Alaska to Florida. I mean, I went from Bellingham area to Atlanta, Georgia. I didn't think there was much farther of a move that could happen. You've done it, though. You went Alaska to Florida.
The furthest move you can do.
Yeah. I mean, that's as far as you go in this country.
Continentally, yours was about as close, though. I mean, if we're not talking about going on a plane or a boat, to get to a different part of the water.
I want you to track it for me one day. Is Alaska to Florida farther than Maine to Hawaii? That's the question. Which diagonal is actually going to be a little longer? We'll figure that out maybe before this episode's even over. Guys, this is a guy who's been from west to east, that's for sure. Jerry, you said two words in there that I really don't like, okay? Mm-hmm. And we don't prep these interviews, so you didn't know to say them to piss me off, and you didn't know not to say them, because they're words everybody uses. Yet I'm one of those guys, and our audience knows I challenge a lot of thoughts when it comes to certain things. I have opinions on everything. Just ask me. I don't like the words financial freedom, because what does that really mean? Because it can change in a moment. I mean, 2 years ago, financial freedom meant something very different than what it means today. With inflation happening, it could mean something very different in a year or two, with who knows what happens in the world and all that stuff. Define, as you believe it, financial freedom.
Totally. And we're tracking. If you noticed, I said greater levels of financial freedom. Okay. And the reason being is that that's not an absolute statement. If you think about it like a scale, you can have, more and more and more financial freedom, and it is always changing. Everyone's got a different definition. You can also have less and less and less. And I've experienced that in my life too. So, for me, if I look at it like a gradient scale, and I've got, the whole, I can go furthest as I possibly can to the left, furthest I could go to the right. On a certain point on this chart, there's what I call financial independence. And that's a definite state. That's when my passive income exceeds my savings, expenses, and taxes. And so what happens at that point is I no longer have to trade time for money. I'm not obligated to do that anymore. And so for me, that's kind of where it starts. Now, what I do beyond that point greatly depends on my purpose and what matters to me. I'm not one to say, hey, let's get financially independent and then travel the world in an RV and contribute nothing and help no one. It just means I don't have the obligation to a paycheck. I'm still going to work. I'm still going to produce. I'm still going to add value, but I do it because of things like reasons that are not financial at that point, right? I'm doing it because it's something that matters regardless of the money.
Okay. So it's truly a passion project. Then at that point, we're able to take on those endeavors. Because as you said, I'm not doing it because I need the money, because you said my passive income equals or exceeds savings, taxes, and expenses.
Precisely. Yep.
Okay. I love it. What are you doing then? Just continuing to help people with their wealth world? Because I'm assuming you're already living in that financial independent state.
So for me, I'm going to do that anyways. And what's ironic is it's almost more of like a creative thing. And I've noticed that the more you achieve that state, you actually end up pulling in more money. Like it just shows up because you're not thinking about it. You're just thinking about helping. And then you have ideas and businesses and charities and different things come up. And so that really is more of just a creative state that you can live in. And it just happens to be, good things show up when you're putting good things out. So, for everyone, it's going to be a little bit different. And that's like, I used to be a financial advisor, Chad. We would teach people, retire at 60 with your 401k and stuff.
Yep.
The stats actually show people get sick and die early when they do that.
Right.
You have to have something you're going to focus on. And so, as you're becoming financially literate, as you're building your way towards this state of financial independence, that's always the thing when we're working with clients. We're like, okay, good, but what are you going to do next? Are you, if someone loves what they do, they might not change it like me. Or it could be they have a day job just because that's what you do after you go to college and that's how you pay bills. And, once they're financially independent, it could actually be worse for them if they don't have a next thing figured out because they're going to have all this time back in their lives.
Interesting. And sadly, I don't know if there's any stats on this, if you've ever figured it out. Do we know what percentage of just the United States actually ever achieves a financial independence? Because I got to believe it's not very high, that most people actually work until they don't have to or can't or are laid off and then live off of minuscule, but never actually achieve that financial independence stat.
Yeah. So I've never seen a stat on financial independence. And I think it's because, mainstream passive income is not something that's tracked. It's not talked about. It's, it's stocks and cryptos and things when you turn on CNBC. If we go by net worth, top 1% net worth, depending on what report you look at, is anywhere from $5 to $10 million or north. And so, my personal belief when I look at the numbers, if someone's investing correctly, they need at least $2 million invested, right? If you're earning 12% on $2 million, that's going to pay you, 20 grand a month. You can pretty much live the way you want to live on that, still cover your savings and reinvesting, still cover your taxes and still be generous. And even then, it's not going to be a life of luxury. It's going to kind of be just the normal life without having to trade time for money. So I would say probably less than 5% of the population is probably even close to that. If we're talking about people that have achieved it, it might even be a lower figure than that.
But as you're saying, the goal is moving us closer on that scale, on that every day towards it. So even if we don't achieve it, boy, we might get close. We might be able to see the finish line, even if we never cross it, and be in some position where we're at least not fully locked into, I have to work until I die.
Totally. Because I'm better off, right? If I had debt, now I don't, I'm going to live a better life because of it. If I've got reserves and before I didn't, I'm going to live better because of it. So even if I don't ultimately get there, and I think everyone should have the full intention to, the closer you get, the better.
Okay. So I got a whole bunch of topics that they send me when I get the pleasure to talk to you, right? They give me this list of 9, 10, 12 things, our speaker can talk about this. Yeah, we might touch on some of that, right?
Sure.
Let's go right to the beginning. What was the catalyst, Jerry, that formed you to build Wealth DynamX and really start helping people be, I think the words you used were financially literate?
Yes. So I grew up not financially literate.
Sure. Most people did.
Most people did, right? So I was, a free lunch kid at school, food bank, bugs in my cereal, like all those kind of things, right? And I thought that was normal. And as I started to grow up, I realized that wasn't normal for everybody. You go to, middle school and high school, and it becomes more and more apparent there's haves and have-nots, right? So for me, money was always a ruin. It was a topic that I didn't like. My parents got divorced over it when I was 9, all in the same summer, 9 years old. House got foreclosed on. My mom's car got repoed, and then they get divorced over finances, and then we're homeless. And that's like all before school starts that year, right? So that was like, for me growing up, like I remember when I was 17 or 18, like thinking about it. And I don't know why this was significant to me. Someone told me the dollar wasn't backed by anything. And I was like 17 or 18, Chad. And I remember thinking, if it's not backed by anything, I'm not going to work for that. Like it's monopoly money. And so I had that moment where I was kind of like, okay, cool, I'm going to not participate. And the next 2 to 3 years of my life, we'll just say they were very hard, right? Like the economy drags you along kicking and screaming, whether you want to participate or not.
Yes.
You got to pay for stuff, right? So, that was for me, like, realizing at a certain point after that 2 to 3 years, I need to learn this. Otherwise, it's going to continue beating me up for the rest of my life. And so I became a financial advisor, ironically. I was like, what better way to learn about this than professionally, like going and getting licensed and learning how to do this and help people, and then working on it on my own stuff too. And so for me, the catalyst, and I was kind of on like the mainstream retail side, right? We talk about the normal 401k and life insurance and whatever. And so when I was, 21 years old, my mom was my client. 60 years old, the age you're supposed to retire. She gets diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. In 6 months, she passes away.
I'm sorry.
And so I watched this whole thing not work with my own mother. And that was kind of the catalyst for me. I'm like, okay, there's gotta be something better than wait till you're 60. Right. And even when you're 60, like there's things, I'm 30 right now. There's things that I'm glad I can do when I'm 30 and I'm not having to wait till I'm 60 because they're just not going to be as enjoyable when I get to that age.
That is true. Being a 50-year-old here, there are some things that are just not as enjoyable at age 50 that they would have been at age 30 if I were doing them and having some fun with it. So great. Okay. So now we get it. As a financial advisor back then, before you launched your own, I'm going to help the world, what was the one lesson that you learned there that you taught everybody? You were like, you've got to know this, even if you don't buy from me, don't work with me. You've got to know this because it's that important a piece of information.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing was, the concept of pay yourself first. That even today, that's something I teach people, and it's various, it's different places we're going to put it. So I'm not telling people to put it in the same areas I would have back then, but the concept of, when you get income, you should pay yourself first, right? We have the average American, the IRS gets the money, then the banks get the money, and then Wall Street gets the money, and then they kind of get whatever's left over if there's anything. And if you flip just that one thing, it's a game changer. It puts you on a totally different projection.
Okay. All right. So we have what we call the Wealth Series. And folks, we've been teasing you with Wealth Series 2.0 coming. We're working on recording it. You can register at winmakegive.com/wealth, where we want to help our audience be financially literate. Because we believe, again, as you mentioned, that most people aren't. It doesn't mean you're broke. It just means you're not literate about finances because it wasn't a conversation that was often comfortable at the kitchen table, or maybe our parents didn't know about it. They were just getting by. So we were not all raised on this. We do that on the Wealth Series. And Jerry, you're the kind of guy that does that as well. And I'm just going to drop the plug for it already because folks, if you've read the show notes, you know it's coming. And the end of the episode, Jerry's going to give this away for free. But Jerry, you wrote a book called The Blueprint to Financial Freedom. Tell me a little bit about the book and why every audience member of the Win Make Give podcast is going to quickly say, even though I hear what the guys teach me on the podcast, I still have to read that book.
Totally. Yeah. And this was for me, learning about this in my early 20s. So as a financial advisor, one of my very first appointments was with a guy. He's actually the dad of my best friend. I've known him since I was 12, 13 years old. And I sit down in front of him and I give him the whole presentation on what I was selling at the time, right? Knocked it out of the park. I've known this guy since I was a kid. So I was like, at least he's going to, purchase something from me just to support me because I'm new in business.
Yep.
And he had zero interest. And he actually explained back to me what I was explaining to him even better than I did it. And when he did that, it sounded like a bad idea. I was like, wait, this doesn't sound good anymore. Right. So, and when I left that appointment, he said, Jerry, when you're ready to learn how money really works, I want you to come talk to me. And that stuck with me. So you fast forward 4 or 5 years, and I started seeing more and more of this, people that were financially literate is how I would just explain them now. They do things differently.
Yep.
And the reason they do things differently is because they know different strategies, different tactics, different things that they can use. So I dove into that world. And what I realized was, okay, there's a lot of stuff out there that's not mainstream that the wealthy historically have used, but it's a lot like getting the list of materials for a house and not having a blueprint on which sequence they should go in. So I started randomly doing all these things because they sound really great. It's very exciting. I want to do this. I want to do that. I want to do that. Well, just like with anything, when I get too many ingredients and I don't have the right sequence, they kind of run into each other and collide, and it can cause a mess and cause problems. So the book I wrote, it goes over, historically what the top 1% have actually done.
Okay.
But it goes in the sequence. First do this, first do that. You have to do the right things. You've got to do them the right way. You've got to do them at the right times and also in the right order. And so that was really, for me, what solved it. And the way I did this was simply just reverse engineering and looking at, okay, when I studied, biographies of people like John Rockefeller and Andrew Carnegie and JP Morgan, I would see these similarities. And I'd also see similar, periods of time they were doing these things. And that's kind of where we're looking at, okay, well, great, I could do, this investment or that investment. Which one do I do first? And are there other things I should be thinking about in the meantime, and what comes after that? And that really is the purpose of the book. And it saves a lot of time because you can just go right through and get from point A to point B.
Okay, so I don't want you to give away the book because I want them to read it. And we're going to give you all a copy if you're paying attention and stick till the end of the episode. or read the show notes where Dave's probably put the link anyway. Give me step A. Don't give me the whole alphabet here. Don't give me A to Z, but give me A. Tease us a little bit. What's step one?
So step one, and this is exactly what we've been talking about. It's financial literacy, right? This is an everyday thing. I'm very big. I was a personal trainer and a bodybuilder. I'm big into fitness. Go to the gym every day. Like that's really what it comes down to. Spend, whether it's on a podcast like this or Investopedia or a YouTube video, like spend at least 10 minutes a day learning about finances. And so we have this thing, we call it the Big 3 Challenge. It's 3 activities that you should do every day for at least 90 days in order to build the habit of doing these things. The first one is learn about money.
Okay.
And so if I do that every day for 90 days, today we're all about technology and automation.
Yep.
Habits and behavior is mental automation, right? We can have good habits, bad habits, and it's just how often do I do something and for how long of a period of time do I do it? And it turns into an automated thing. So if you do this, you become automated on learning about money. It just becomes part of who you are, right?
Okay.
The second step is do something to increase your income. So not something to earn income, you're already doing that, but do something above and beyond, increase income. And the third piece of this Big 3 Challenge is, every day for 90 days, monitor your expenses and transactions. We rate them on a 1 to 5 scale, 1 being it's a dumb idea, 2 is bad timing, 3 is maybe, 4 is, keep it, survival, and then 5 is something that produces more income. So if someone does these 3 things, they're going to learn about money, they're going to increase income, and they're going to be basically keeping more of what they earn through that transactional rating system. And that's going to turn into a behavior of theirs that'll last them the rest of their lives.
Okay. So there you go, folks. We just teased you with A. You got to come check out the book for B through Z to get through that whole alphabet and learn the blueprint. Okay. So I've got a bunch of people who are, I'm going to give them a little credit. I'm going to say they're financially literate. So some of our audience know, maybe they're new since the Wealth series. Maybe they're just still catching on or whatever. And talk to someone who's financially literate. Give a message to my audience, our audience here at WinMake. Give them a message, Jerry, that they need to walk away from this episode with, because they're already, they understand finances. They understand the conversation. They might not be there yet, but they understand what they're doing. They know their net worth because they track that, because that's one of the things we teach them to do. But give them some lesson that they need to take away from a guy like you today.
Yeah. So, basically when I look at this and keep in mind, guys, the book that I wrote, I got this from the top 1% historically. So if this was just my stuff, you should be very worried. A 30-year-old guy telling you all about your finances and what you should do and how to build wealth. No, this is historical data. And I just did the work for 10 years of finding it and putting it together. Right. So what I would say, because there might be people that are listening that are even further along than I am. There might be people that are in the same spot, people that are even a little bit behind me, is, knowledge for me is based on results. And so if I don't have results in an area, for me personally, my viewpoint is that there's something missing. There's something I don't know in that area yet. Otherwise, I would have results there. And so, when I'm financially literate, what can happen is I can have, 1 or 2 things that occur is I can have the barrier of, I've learned this, I've heard this already, I know this, there aren't that many new things with finances, right? There's going to be a handful of the same things you'll hear from different people. And so I can fall into the trap of like, okay, yeah, I've heard this one. And it's more just like it's an interesting, entertaining thing. But the question is, okay, but am I doing it? And am I succeeding with the concept? And is it fulfilling the purpose it's intended to fulfill? And if it's not, then I need to actually look at my knowledge and figure out, okay, well, what am I missing? Right. So that's probably the crowd that's, maybe doing, really well. We can always learn more. For those that are like newer, this stuff isn't unknowable. Right. That's the biggest barrier for most people with finances. We get this idea that it's this complicated, sophisticated thing that was created by banks and Wall Street with their marketing so that we feel like we need them in our lives. Whether you do or don't, that's up to you. But at the end of the day, everything financial comes down to basic arithmetic and the ability to look up words. And if I can do that, I can understand basically any financial concept just by knowing the math and then knowing what the vocabulary means and knowing that the math is always underlying the vocabulary. Right. And if I keep it that simple, there's not a thing that I can't go dive into and figure out.
So you mean my math teacher was right when they said you will use this later in life? I should have paid attention in math class more?
I mean, to a degree, I don't use geometry or trigonometry. I use an iPhone calculator and I'm good.
Excellent. All right. I like you more now, Jerry. All right. Yeah. Now we can get going. All right. So here's one of our favorite topics. We love to talk about it. We've had Tom Wheelwright on. We've talked about his book, things like that. Ben's interviewed him a few times. We love not paying taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And legally, let's be really clear on that, folks, because we talk about, the tax code is a few pages on how to pay your taxes and all these pages on how to not pay taxes. Most people never read any of it. So give me a tip or three on how to not pay taxes and get away with it, as you like to say.
Yeah, so not paying taxes, and like you said, we don't want to be a Willie Nelson, right? As much as I love and respect Willie,
I think I just saw he
bars.
put like everything up for auction or something like that, and something. I mean, somebody did. Oh no, that was Kinney. That was the other country singer. All right, forget.
There's
All
a
right,
couple of them that decided just not to pay.
Yes.
So as you had said, with not paying taxes, first I want to start with like understanding why the tax code is there.
Okay.
Right? The tax code was written by the wealthy. You look at, it's passed into law by politicians. If you look at their net worths, most of them are top 1%ers. It's also, sponsored in by lobbyists who represent business interests. They don't want to pay taxes either. And so they're able to get these things put there. And it's, several thousand pages of you've got to dive in and roll up your sleeves and do the work. Right.
Sure.
So a couple of things that I like to point out that a lot of people aren't always familiar with is self-directing your retirement plan. Okay, like we're all familiar with the 401k and the IRA and the health savings account. Well, then it's great. You can put money into those. You can get tax deductions. You can self-direct those. And what that means is I get a passive custodian that's not limiting me to a menu of Wall Street funds. And I can do things like invest in real estate or do private lending or buy gold and silver or these different types of alternative opportunities. Even for your high income earners, Google something called a self-directed cash balance plan. You can do a self-directed pension. You can put in high six figures every year and put that into real estate and actually have that running like a business inside your pension, tax deferred, and use that later. So that's one of the first things that I like to point out because that's one everyone really can do. The other one that is big is the charitable trust. Okay. Wealthy families have been using charitable trusts forever to shelter assets. And so if you do something, for example, like there's something called a charitable remainder trust. I can put money into it. I can get a charitable tax deduction in the year that I contribute. The funds in there can grow tax deferred. I do have to take a small distribution every year. But I basically can run that, similar to if I were to put it in a 401k that's self-directed. I can invest that wherever I want to invest it and have the tax shelter happening. And I can use that as well to build my wealth. The distributions can go to my personal income. And the funny part about it is, the show is win, make, give, right? So The intention is you want to give that money. But the IRS puts it in law that if it runs out, oops, no big deal. Like if you pay it to your kids, your grandkids, your family members first, and there's not any money left over for charity, they still allow you to keep the charitable tax deduction. So it's a more flexible option if you want to have that on the back end as well.
Oh, I like that one. That's one I got to say. I did not know that one. And I think Jerry and I might be talking again a little bit later because I definitely like that one. You said two words in there, Jerry, I want to ask about. It wasn't financial freedom. Don't worry. It wasn't those words. You said gold and silver.
Yes.
So I know when markets start doing crazy things, we start to see the commercials, right? We buy your gold or buy gold or buy. Talk to us about the precious metals. Should we? Shouldn't we? Where do they fall into this wealth world?
So precious metals, the easiest way to explain this is they are not an investment. Right. So they do not produce an income. And so for the average person, precious metals are going to be one of two things. It's either going to be a store of value or it's going to be a speculation. Right. Now, if you're speculating, you need to realize who you're speculating with. You're speculating with some of the biggest banks in the world. That's probably not a game you're going to win. So I don't speculate with precious metals. I treat it a lot like owning real estate. An ounce of gold has been an ounce of gold for 6,000 years. No currency is ever going to change that fact. Just like an acre of land has been an acre of land since day one. No currency or denomination is ever going to change that either. So I store my value in it. Most people don't know you can borrow against these assets as well. So similar like a house, you can do a line of credit against gold, borrow against it tax-free, and then you can take the proceeds from that and do, real estate, private lending, whatever you would like to do, and you can earn a positive arbitrage spread between the appreciation of gold minus the interest cost plus what you're getting on that back end, whatever you invest in at the end of the day.
That sounded like algebra. That really sounded like algebra there. Your A plus B was equaling C minusing D and stuff. So, all right. So some of that math is going to pay off for somebody who remembers it from school. Bob's usually our math guy. So that's an interesting thought. So you're saying an ounce of gold is an ounce of gold. So if you're taking your funds and just purchasing it, that's the thing you're going to know. You're going to always have an ounce of gold. Now, gold prices will go up, gold prices will go down. And that's where you're saying, be careful speculating against the banks because they're going to win.
Yeah. And really too, like for me, when I got to a certain point with my financial literacy personally, where I realized what fiat currency means, a paper
tell
dollar.
Us what it means.
So if it's basically backed by government decree. The fact that if you have dollars, you can pay taxes. If you don't, you can't pay taxes, and then you end up like Willie Nelson, right? To tie things back around and come full circle, right? So when you look at that, it really means the dollar is only backed by the fact that we have to use it. That really is all it is. It's a confidence game. It's not a good store of value. We're seeing that this year. Inflation rates and CPI are 7, 8, 9%. If you look at places like shadow stats, you can see that oftentimes real inflation is double what CPI says it is. So we can speculate where it is, where it isn't, but it's a high number. And so at the end of the day, when I own a real asset, what the wealthy do is they don't trade real assets for things that don't have value. But if I own real estate, it doesn't matter how many shoelaces you tell me my real estate's worth. I don't want shoelaces. If I own an ounce of gold, it doesn't matter how many pieces of green paper you tell me I can sell it for. I don't want the green paper. So that was a mindset shift for me. Is I would rather own the assets. I would rather own the real wealth. I'll earn in the paper. I'll spend in the paper, but I'm not keeping it.
Okay. What are you going to do with the gold? I mean, at some point, don't you need to cash it in?
So I borrow against mine. So my intent is never to sell as prices do appreciate. So gold became legal for U.S. citizens to own in the 1970s. It was outlawed in 1933. And then there was a period of time where they manipulated our currency, took us off the gold backed standard in 71. Right. Once the dust settled, they're like, okay, cool. The peasants can own gold again, basically. And so if you measure the return on gold,
peasants.
Hooray. If you measure the compounding annual growth rate from that period till now, it's about 8 to 10% long-term. So I know for me, it's a long-term store of value. It'll continue to appreciate. I'll continue to borrow against it as it does. For me, the real play is the fact that I'm investing that line of credit, that loan for income. And that's what I'm going to use to, reinvest, buy more assets, et cetera.
When you talked about buying assets, you threw around real estate a bunch in there. And a lot of our audience members happen to be in real estate or own real estate. We talk real estate a lot. Are you a strong believer that your head is going like a bobblehead right now? Are you a strong believer and that's one of the assets to own as much as possible?
I do. Yeah, I do it a little bit differently. So I'm more on the seller finance side just because I don't like the property management. And, if they break their toilet, they're not going to call me. Okay. Right. But for me, any type of income investment I've done to date has real estate involved in it in some way, shape, or form. And so I'm a big believer in that. If you look at, a lot of the successful billionaires, Andrew Carnegie is attributed with saying that more millionaires have been created through real estate than any other asset class.
Right.
So, and I love that with stock, they can print more, they can issue more, crypto, they can literally type it into existence. Same thing with fiat currencies. Like it's a long process to make more real estate. And so that's something where I can look at that similar to gold. There's a similarity there. The scarcity and the difficulty of creating it does give it more value than other things that are easier to create.
Jerry, if you ever figure out how to create gold, call me. I will work with you on that one once you figure out how to actually create gold.
I mean, you have to have it's a supernova. You have to mimic a supernova. So they've figured out how to create it, but it's so expensive and dangerous to mankind that they don't do it.
Okay.
So it's a nuclear thing you have to do.
I know it was one of the things like Michelangelo or whatever was supposedly working on how to turn lead to gold or something. And when someone figures that one out, whoever you are, call me. I'm in. Jerry and I are in. Whatever we need to do to help make that happen. All right, Jerry, the book. You want to give away a copy. That's what you said to me right at the beginning. You said, hey, Chad, I got this book, but it's not that I'm selling it. It's I want to give this to people because I want them to know it. How do they get the book?
Yes. So go to jerryfetta.com, my first and last name. Feta, it's like the cheese with 2 T's in it.
Okay. So Fetta.
Fetta. Yeah. So jerryfetta.com /B2F promo. So that's the letter B, the number 2, the letter F, and the word promo. And you can grab a free copy there.
Okay. And we'll put that in the show notes. We want everyone to get a copy. We want everyone to be able to read it. We want everyone to say, hey, this blueprint, right? There's the B, right? 2, financial freedom. There's only 1 F though. So if you're sitting there going, wait, what did he say? It's B2F and then promo. because he's giving it away as the promo. You can get yourself a copy of the book. I look forward to getting mine. Okay, so look, you've covered a lot, and you, like me, both seem to be fast talkers, right? Yeah. Some of our audience is like, whoa, if I put this on 2x speed, these guys would be done in like 3 minutes, and I would not understand a word the two of them said. As it is, I got to go down to half speed to slow this episode down to understand Chad and Jerry. So we've covered a lot in just this 30 minutes, Jerry. Give me the one last thought, the one last message, even if it's something you've already said, or if it's something I didn't ask about yet. Give me that one last thing you want to leave everybody on the Win, Make, Give audience with after spending some time with you today, other than how to get the book.
Yeah. So this one, I learned this, I think I was 22 or 23 when I saw this chart. It's called the 40% rule. Okay. And basically when I was kind of describing to you what I saw at the time, it's a chart from 1913 till now, right? So it's about a 100-year period. And it showed the savings rates of different wealth classes. And so long story short, when you look at the savings rates of the top 1% of wealth, they consistently save 40% of their gross income.
Wow.
Exactly. I looked at that number and I was like, wow. And I started thinking about this and I was like, okay, well, what does that entail, right? I have to earn a lot of income. So if I do this is actually the linchpin. If I strive to save 40% of my income, it forces my income up. It forces me to be more creative. It forces me to invest because now I have this capital. It forces me to do tax planning because when I save 40%, that's usually going to be money that's taxed. So as I started looking at that, I realized how profound that was. If somebody did just that, if they just started with that, they would be set. That would put them in a position where they could do so many different things with their finances. And so that would be the one thing I would impart, whether you're, just starting out, whether you're doing this already, intentionally go for that 40% savings rule. And what was unique on that chart is you would see years when they dipped, right? Being 22, 23 years old, I didn't quite understand it until I looked at it more. And, one of the areas was the Great Depression. And I saw not only did they dip, but they went into the negative. And I thought about that and I was like, man, these guys got their asses kicked. Like what happened? And then I realized, no, that's their savings rate. They stopped saving and actually borrowed because they were buying all the assets as they were on sale. And that's why they do that. And then as soon as the Depression ended, I kid you not, Chad, the savings rate spiked back up, all-time high on the entire chart, right after the Depression was done. So for me, like I still get the chills when I think about that because it's such a good visual of what we should be striving to do. And it's such a simple thing, not easy, but it's a simple thing to do.
I love that. All right, folks, you want a goal. There's your goal, right? 40% of your gross income saved month after month after month after month. What does that mean you need to do? Do you need to be cutting back on certain expenses? Do you need to be raising your income? Do you need to get that side hustle? Do you need to be investing more wisely? What do you need to do to be in a position where you're able to take 40% and just go whoop and stock it off onto the side for, hey, when those opportunities do present themselves where you can go into the negative because you're saying, hey, this is the time to be buying all those assets because I'm going to make a killing when it's over and done with. Warren Buffett always teaches us, right? Buy when the market is down and everybody else is running in panic.
Exactly. Precisely.
All right. So folks, Jerry Fetta, that's Jerry. You can spell Jerry. That one's an easy one. Feta, Fetta.com. And then it's B2F promo. Grab yourself a copy of his book. Jerry, even if they don't get the book, obviously we've given the website now, jerryfetta.com. Is that the best way for people to get in touch with you? Is that the best way for people to follow you and continue to take in the information that you're sharing and putting out there? What's the best way if I want to stay in touch with Jerry after this episode?
Yeah, so 2 places I'm very active. Instagram, so just find me on Instagram at Jerry Fetta. I am one of those guys, if you message me, I'll send you a message back. I'm happy to connect up and answer questions. The other one is we've started doing TikTok recently within the last year. Which I never thought I would do. I thought this was for 14-year-olds.
I'm still fighting that one, Jerry. I'm still fighting that one.
The reach on it, the views are so much better. That was what finally sold me, is I put a video and got 1 million views on it. And I was like, I can't do that on Facebook and Instagram as easily. So
yeah, I think Bob mentioned in a recent episode that he watches TikTok videos once they make Instagram. So that's about his touch to it. So you're on Instagram and you're on TikTok.
And I'm on TikTok, just at Jerry Fetta for both of those.
All right. I think I'm at Chad Himes on TikTok. I just think I've ever logged in other than to lock up my username. So, folks, I don't know. Folks, now you know how to get in touch with Jerry. Now you know how to get your hands on the book. Now you know how to follow up with him if you want. Join us in our Facebook group. That's Win, Make, Give. Let's hear your thoughts on what your takeaway is from the conversation with Jerry. Make sure you visited winmakegive.com/wealth to get registered for the Wealth 2.0 series. Once we finish getting it all recorded and we can bring that to you so we can help you, just like Jerry's been helping all of us, become much more financially literate. Jerry, on behalf of Bob and Ben, who I ditched today so that I could get the time to have this conversation with you, and on behalf of our audience, I appreciate you joining us on Win Make Give.
Thanks so much.
All right, folks, until our next episode, as always, do good.